Right now, there are conversations taking place across the country about the future of our leadership, and more specifically, about who will step up in these challenging times. We have individuals like Wes Moore, a man who embodies integrity, experience, and a deep understanding of what it means to serve. He's a veteran, a communicator, and someone who has shown time and again that he has the moral compass needed for leadership in the modern world. Some of us have even thought about the possibility of a future presidential race, and for a while, there was speculation about who might face him on the other side of the aisle. We considered figures like Eric Kaiton, and for a time, it seemed like Ron DeSantis might be a major contender. But now, things are shifting, and it's looking more and more like figures like J.D. Vance could be in the mix. In the midst of all this, there's a growing recognition that we need leadership who can bridge the gaps, someone who understands not just policy, but the people behind the policies. Someone who can communicate with clarity and purpose. Wes Moore, in many ways, is the embodiment of this idea. But it's not just about him. There are younger voices out there, others who have the potential to lead in ways we haven't yet seen. The question is, who will rise to the occasion? It's not just about a singular person or one political party. The landscape is shifting, and right now, more than ever, there's a need for independent voices. The old two-party system might not be serving everyone in the way it should, and there's a growing sense of frustration among many voters who feel they don't have a home in either camp. This frustration is especially evident after the results of the recent election. But there's something else happening here too, a renewed energy around local politics. It's not just about who's going to be in the White House. It's about who's going to be leading our schools, our towns, and our cities. One example of this shift is the work we're doing with Dan Osborne, an independent candidate for the U.S. Senate. A Navy veteran, Dan almost managed to defeat a MAGA Republican by just a few points in a race that many thought was unwinnable. His close call shows what's possible, especially when we focus our attention on the down-ballot races, where change can happen quietly but powerfully. In fact, we saw several victories in local races, including mayorships, that showed there's a real possibility for independent candidates to make their mark. So, what does this mean for those of us who identify as Democrats? Well, it's important to understand that independents aren't just spoilers. They're a viable alternative, and they can win in places where traditional Democrats might struggle. Take Nebraska, for example. We don't always need to see the world in black and white, where it's either Democrat or Republican. We can, and should, embrace the idea that independents can bring a fresh perspective and a new kind of leadership that isn't constrained by party lines. At the heart of all this is a shared enemy, the threat to our democracy. Right now, we're facing a moment where we have to come together, even if we don't always agree on everything. Our shared priority has to be defending the foundations of our democracy. And in that fight, we must be strategic. It's not just about running against a particular person or group. It's about finding ways to win where we can, focusing our energy on the targets that matter most. When you look at someone like Donald Trump, there's a clear understanding that his strategy is to wear us down. He hopes we'll get tired, that we'll throw in the towel and walk away. He knows that if he keeps pushing and pushing, eventually people will grow exhausted. The same can be said for figures like Vladimir Putin, who rely on the fatigue of the masses to get what they want. Trump is banking on the same principle. But we can't let him win that way. The stakes are incredibly high, and as we head into this next election cycle, there's a real need to communicate those stakes to the American people. It's not just about winning or losing. It's about the future of the country. We need to make sure that people understand the gravity of the situation. It's about ensuring that the person who leads us is not just competent, but ethical and moral. And that's where the real challenge lies. The issue is that many people don't want to hear the "I told you so" crowd. And I get that. It's annoying when people say, "I told you this was going to happen," especially when they've been saying it for years. The problem is that we've been warning about this moment for a long time, and now it's finally here. We can't just sit back and say, "I told you so." Instead, we need to focus on the issue at hand. That's why, rather than focusing solely on Trump himself, we need to talk about the individuals who are connected to him. Take, for example, the people who are nominated for positions in his administration. These are the people who are supposed to be the moral role models for our country, the ones who will lead our military and make decisions that affect the lives of millions. We need to ask ourselves, do these individuals have the character we want in leadership? Think about it this way. If you wouldn't trust someone to be alone in a room with your daughter, would you trust them with the country's nuclear weapons? It's a simple question, but one that cuts to the core of the issue. If you wouldn't feel comfortable with a person in a private, personal setting, why would you trust them to make decisions that affect national security? This is the kind of test we need to be applying to every person who steps forward to take leadership in our country. The challenge, however, is that many people don't view Trump in this way. For some, he's the lesser of two evils. And that's how we saw a lot of voters in the last election. Many independents voted for Joe Biden because they felt he was the lesser evil compared to Trump. But even that decision wasn't one they were happy with. So, what's the way forward? It's about focusing on the basics, on the fundamentals of what makes a good leader. It's about putting aside the personalities and focusing on the character of the people who want to lead. For example, think about the local school board test. Would you trust someone to run your local school district if they had a history of flip-flopping on important issues? Would you trust someone who couldn't make up their mind about their alliances or who met with war criminals? These are the kinds of questions that matter, and these are the kinds of standards we need to apply to our leaders. When you break it down to these basic tests, it becomes easier to see who is fit to lead. It's like a sports analogy. Think about a quarterback who just isn't getting the job done. If your team isn't winning, you don't just sit back and accept it. You make a change. In politics, the stakes are even higher, and the need for leadership that can get the job done is more important than ever. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just have the right person in place. Having the right person in a position of power is only part of the equation. What truly matters is ensuring that this person upholds the principles, the standards, and the integrity we need in leadership. We've seen too many times how power can be abused, how leaders can become disconnected from the people they serve. We've all heard the promises and the rhetoric, but when the time comes to deliver, we must ensure that those in power are held accountable for their actions. The idea isn't just to get someone elected. It's about maintaining vigilance and making sure those who are in office understand they are answerable to the people. It's about making sure their actions align with their words, and that when they make decisions, they do so with the best interest of everyone in mind. That's the key to moving forward, and without that accountability, we risk falling back into the same old patterns of dishonesty and self-interest that have held us back in the past. In conclusion, we're truly at a crossroads, and the future ahead of us is uncertain. It's easy to feel disillusioned or unsure, but we cannot afford to be passive in the face of such uncertainty. This moment calls for action, for clarity, and for determination. One thing is clear. The status quo isn't going to work anymore, and we can't simply accept it because it's comfortable. We need to be strategic in how we move forward, focused on the things that matter, and deeply committed to finding leaders who are not only capable but who also have the moral fortitude to guide us through these turbulent times. These are the leaders who will not just defend our democracy but will work to build it up in a way that serves all of us. Leaders who will focus on uniting us, on ensuring that our voices are heard and that we are moving towards a future where justice, integrity, and fairness are the cornerstones of our society. So, as we navigate this complex landscape, remember this. Don't just sit back and wait for things to happen. This is a pivotal moment, and it's up to all of us to take responsibility for the future we want to see. Get involved in whatever way you can. Support those who align with your values, not just based on political affiliation, but based on the principles they stand for. And above all, hold them to the highest standards. Leadership is not just about power. It's about accountability and service to the people. We owe it to ourselves and to future generations to ensure that we make the right choices, now more than ever. We all have a role to play in shaping the direction of our nation. Whether it's through voting, supporting candidates, or simply holding our leaders accountable, it's time to step up and take action. We have a responsibility to each other, to our communities, and to the values that bind us together as a society. It's time to take that responsibility seriously, because the future depends on it. Before you go, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more updates on this and other critical issues. We'll continue to bring you the latest news, analysis, and insights as we navigate this important period together. Stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for watching.